You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
All right. Well, I'm first this week. So my topic this week, I got a little excited and I took a lot of notes. Very similar to Victoria and her octopi topic.
Octopuses, you mean?
Octopuses.
Yes, octopuses. I know it's pseudo Latin, and actually, that comes into play with my critter this week.
Ooh.
Now I'm gonna start with a story. I want you to go back, pretend that you are. This is gonna be hard for us, unfortunately. Pretend that you are a European explorer going out into the world, and you land at the weird but hot shores of Australia. You wander around, and as you're going past this river or stream, you see the most bizarre collection of creatures you have ever seen. So you catch it, you take it, you make it into a pelt, and you send it back to Great Britain, where everyone laughs in your face. Thinks that you're a fraud, thinks that an Asian taxidermist, there we go, an Asian taxidermist stitched a bunch of different creatures together to create this animal.
I'm going to have to take this one off my list now.
Ha!
Yeah, I think it might have been on my list too.
I think we all wanted to do this one, Rachel. You beat us to it. Go for it.
Yes. So this week, that creature that you discovered in Australia, discovered being the Europeans first spotted it, was the platypus. Now, the platypus, like I said, it was originally, when it went back into Great Britain, when it was sent back in 1798, that was about when they first encountered it, European settlers encountered it. They had no idea. Everyone thought it was faked. George Shaw, who was a botanist and a zoologist, actually took scissors to the different edges to see if there were stitches, because they honestly thought it was a stitched together animal. Because what's crazy about the platypus is not only is it an amphibious animal, but it's just this combination of so many different parts that you wouldn't think would go together. Now, originally, the British people, when they were in Australia, what they would call it, they'd call it the duck bill, they'd call it the duck mole, the water mole, right? They honestly thought that it was a duck-billed mole of the mole family. It is very much not. So a platypus is a type of monotreme, which is a type of mammal. Fun fact of the week for me is that it's one of 5 existing monotremes left in the entire world. There are 3 types of mammals, and as naturalists, we generally will know this. Most people experience or have more experience with marsupials, so like koalas, kangaroos, possums.
Opossums.
Opossums. I love those guys. Or placental mammals, which would be like us, humans, squirrels, a lot of the more generalized animals that we see nowadays. Monotremes, there's only 5 remaining species of monotremes left on the planet. And 4 of them are types of echidna. And then there's the platypus. What makes them so special is that they're the only mammals that lay eggs. They also sweat, well, platypus at least, they sweat their milk for the babies to lap up.
Yeah, that's I love that fact. It's so crazy.
Okay, you think that's crazy. Platypuses only get more bizarre because not only are they amphibious, but their beaver-like tail is actually just a broad extension of their body. It's flat, but it's covered in this dense fur, and it's generally brown, that it traps air within their fur to help keep them nice and warm and keep them waterproof so they don't get soaked to the bone. It's very similar to how beavers work with their fur. They also have this snout that goes forward, right? And it was very similar to a duckbill. It is actually made out of soft skin, and their muscles, how they open their jaw, is completely different from how we open our jaws, how other mammals open their jaws. It's a different mechanism. And I would go further into that, but there's more. So their fur, this is actually just recently discovered. I guess, Kirk, you and I talked about this off mic. Their fur actually fluoresces underneath ultraviolet light. So it looks brown to us, but in ultraviolet light, when you shine ultraviolet light on it or use a black light, it turns blue-green. Very similar to Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb.
They were onto something there.
They were very much onto something. Their webbed feet, their front webbed feet are actually more webbed than their back feet. And when they walk on the ground, like on the earth rather than swimming, they actually walk on their knuckles. They curl their webbed feet underneath to protect their webbing. So they walk on their knuckles.
That sounds uncomfortable.
It sounds so uncomfortable. When they're swimming in the water, they also close their eyes and their ears. So their eyes and their ears are actually situated in a groove on the end of their soft-skinned bill that they have, their snout. And their eyes and their ears actually close. So a characteristic that a lot of people notice or see when they are swimming is they're moving their bodies side to side. And what they're doing, and they're one of two mammals that actually do this, is they actually are able to perceive electric fields. Very similar to one species of dolphin. So they sense their prey through electrolocation.
Well, most like sharks and fish have that too with their lateral line that they can detect that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. But they're one of two mammals that can do that, which is absolutely insane. So the other thing is that the adults do not have teeth. They don't have teeth. They have 6 teeth when they're babies, and they lose them they're type of molars. They have 6 molars. They drop them once they leave the nest, and they have a heavily keratinized pad instead inside of their mouth that help them grind up their insect larvae, the worms, the shrimp, and the crayfish that they eat. And if that wasn't crazy enough, the way that they walk is actually more reminiscent to lizards and other reptiles than it is of mammals, because their legs are actually on the side of their body rather than underneath.
Yeah, so weird.
One more thing I really wanted to touch on was that they are actually also one of the few species of venomous mammals. Both males and females have spurs on their hind feet, but only males have a venom they're able to deliver a venom into whatever they're attacking or whatever is attacking them. It's not lethal to humans, but apparently it causes severe pain.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we love that.
I'll be careful not to pick up a platypus.
Very much. Yeah, they are absolutely crazy. They live in small streams and rivers all over like the western coast of Australia. Their inland habitat range isn't well known, but they can live up to about 11 years in the wild, up to 17 in captivity. And they dig burrows in the mud around rivers and stream banks in order to have their nest of babies of their eggs or to just live. Just absolutely crazy.
One of the definitely weirdest animals of all time.
I wouldn't, if I was in Great Britain in 1798 and someone came back with this pelt of something that does not make any sense, I wouldn't believe them either.
Yeah, some of my ancestors went to Australia back around then.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that.
But it wasn't as explorers. We'll leave it at that. All right. Great. Well, let's go take a break and we'll come back with Victoria. Kirk here with a quick note. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps other lovers of the strange find our show. You can also find and follow us on social media. Search for Strange by Nature Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or come visit us at strangebynaturepodcast.com. We'll see you there. Now, back to the show.
All right, we're back. So I have a question for you guys. Do any of you have a cat?
I have
or
two.
maybe you grew up with one?
I have in the past, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am sorry to inform you that it's possible that you have a parasite that might be controlling your brain.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
I've heard about this, actually.
Yeah. Toxoplasma gondii. It's a protozoan, so that's a single-celled organism. It invades various cells in the bodies of warm-blooded animals, including the brain. And cats or other felines are what's called the definitive host. It's the only place that this protozoan can sexually reproduce. The cats poop out it's called an oocyst. You can think of it like an egg. It's not an egg, but that gets transferred to the soil, or if you have an indoor cat, litter box, and then picked up by other animals through what they call the fecal oral route. Yeah.
Our favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
So
I don't clean up after my
Wash your hands, kids.
Yeah.
Please wash your hands. Dear God.
If you or your significant other or someone close to you has been pregnant, you may have heard that pregnant women are not supposed to change a cat's litter box or to garden without gloves. This is why. The infection it's pretty much asymptomatic for the most part if you're healthy when you get it. But if you're immunocompromised, like if you have AIDS or leukemia or things like that, it can be very bad, fatal even. And for pregnant women who get infected with this for the first time while they're pregnant, it can cause pretty severe congenital issues with the baby, including brain lesions, eye lesions, and they often die. So in fact, this congenital condition was first discovered in a 1-month-old baby that died in New York City in 1939. And the parasite had been described about 30 years earlier in 1908, but for a long time, scientists didn't know how it was transmitted and who the definitive host was. So in 1954, it was the first time that a couple biologists suggested that maybe undercooked meat might be how it was transmitted. And there was a French scientist who decided to take this suggestion and run with it in 1965. He went to a Paris orphanage and...
sounds ethical.
Yeah, super ethical.
I don't like where this is going at all.
I don't
So
either.
he took the baseline rate of Toxoplasmosis from the children at this orphanage, 10%. Then he started feeding them barely cooked beef and horse meat, which maybe like for French people isn't that weird, but
Yeah, some chevalier.
yeah. So the rate of infection rose to 50% at that point. And then
Really?
after he added barely cooked lamb into the diet, it rose to 100%.
Whoa.
There you go, kids.
This is why we have ethics departments.
Seriously. So over the years, scientists have been studying this organism, and they had noticed that infected lab rats and mice were more active and bold. And so it was thought, the parasite might be causing this change in behavior. Cats tend to be attracted to fast movement. And obviously, like, mice that are bolder and less cautious are probably more likely to get eaten by a cat and to infect the cat so that the little bug can reproduce. But there was this Czech scientist, Jaroslav Flager. He's still alive, in fact, I think. And he had been learning a lot about parasites, and he also had a theory that this parasite might also be affecting people's behavior if it's affecting the behavior of rodents. So I forgot to mention this earlier, but about 50% of the human population worldwide is infected with toxoplasmosis. It is extremely common. Varies a bit by country, depending. Like the French, as discussed, eat a lot of mostly raw meat, so they have very high infection rates.
Makes me feel good about the sushi that I ate.
Yeah, you should. But vegetarians, you're not safe either. You can get it through unwashed vegetables, untreated water, things like that. But at any rate, this guy Flager started doing some population studies among humans in the Czech Republic, and he discovered that people infected with toxoplasmosis have delayed reaction times. Also, probably related, increased.
I'm sorry, what?
Delayed reaction times. You're very funny.
That's a terrible joke. I'm sorry.
We knew it, Kirk.
They are more frequently involved in car crashes.
All right, I'm safe.
Sex-specific personality traits of people infected with this. Men infected with Toxoplasma are more likely to be suspicious, introverted, not to really care about people's opinions, including sloppy dresser. So, like, Kirk, this is you all the way.
Kirk, I'm really
concerned.
Yeah,
I gotta get some antibiotics or something here.
More likely to flout rules.
That's me to a T.
Go read up on it, folks. But infection also makes rodents and, studies show, humans more attracted to the smell of cat pee. It reduces fear of cats, and in fact hijacks the sexual response system in the brain. Basically, it makes you find cat pee sexy, but only if you're a male.
Kirk.
I can tell you that I must not have toxoplasmosis then, because that smell is horrifying.
Yeah, and it manages
to. As well.
Yeah, cat pee is pretty gross, in my opinion. But it does this by somehow affecting dopamine metabolism in the brain. So dopamine is the reward neurotransmitter. So really, this parasite can really do some pretty amazing things in the brain. Most concerningly, I mean, if the car crashes and all this other stuff wasn't concerning enough, it's also potentially linked with schizophrenia. There's a lot that's not totally understood here, and studies show differing results, but there's some evidence, and to the extent that this is true, it must be interacting with some underlying genetic factors, and scientists think it may have to do with a lowered immune response, genetic lowered immune response to fight off the parasite. But actually, one of the drugs that's most commonly used against schizophrenia has been shown in cell culture to be active against the parasite. So it's just a little alarming. I know we know about, and I'm sure we're probably going to talk about in other episodes, insects and other parasites that control invertebrates' behavior in very strange ways.
On my list.
I have no doubt, but it's very weird and somewhat disturbing to think about vertebrates and even humans' brains be controlled by such a tiny little protozoan.
I love cats. Cats are the best.
Words to remember from Kirk.
Stunned silence. That's wonderful.
We'll get you some cat pee perfume there, or cologne there, for you for your birthday, Kirk.
My wife would have to enjoy that smell too, though.
Oh, that's fair.
And I've already established that I do not. I actually had to do all the litter box duty when my wife was pregnant, which convinced me to not get another cat.
My roommate has 2 cats, so I get to play with them and not have to clean the litter box at all.
That's the best. I think that's all we have to say today about cat urine. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Kirk will be up.
Now, here at my house, we've been talking about going on a little summer road trip or something because we're getting a little stir crazy around the house. And we're thinking of going the big, pack the family in the car and drive out west, maybe go to Yellowstone or something like that. And I'm thinking back to when I was a kid and took that first trip out west. It was the first time I had seen the oil derricks kind of pumping up and down out in the fields as you're driving by them for miles and miles. And I remember thinking about that as a kid and thinking, wow, how awesome would that be to have one of those just sitting in your backyard? Not because it's beautiful or anything, but it's just sitting there money. You're basically pumping money out of the ground. And to a kid who never had, the money to buy whatever toys he wanted and stuff, it was you got a little money making machine sitting in your backyard. And in my mind, you don't have to do a thing. It just does all this work. And you're boom, I got a barrel of oil. I can go sell it, right?
So
I thought that would be pretty
say
cool.
No to that.
Yeah. So I was, I think everything I knew about oil and whatnot came from the Beverly Hillbillies, on reruns. It'd be actually if you strike oil, you got your Texas tea, your black gold, and now you're a millionaire. So that sounded pretty sweet to me. Problem is I grew up in Minnesota and there's no oil. So that was not going to be an option to strike it rich in my backyard like that. So crude oil actually is in a little bit of a slump right now, but because of the pandemic and people not traveling around as much, but it's still about $45 a barrel is what it's selling for right now. There was some concern a few years back because barrels themselves are about, I think, $30, and the value of oil actually fell below the cost of the barrel that it was in, which
sounds right.
It's kind of arbitrary, but I think was sort of moment for some people who had a lot of money on that.
That's sort of how it costs more to make a penny than a penny is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In November of 1998, it dropped down to $17.81 a barrel. And I remember this moment because I was in a 15-passenger van driving to the Florida Everglades, and we had budgeted a whole bunch of money to pay for gas. And I remember on the way down, gas was only, I think, 86 cents a gallon. And we were freaking out. It was so cheap because oil was worthless. They couldn't barely make anything out of it.
That sounds
now that is
the best thing. That sounds like my grandpa telling a story of how he'd fill up a whole gallon of a tank or whatever on 15 cents.
Yeah, it's not so great for the environment when people all decide they're going to go drive a whole lot. But on the flip side of that, it has been very high. Back in June 2008, it jumped to $166 a barrel, which is a new record. So the price goes up and down. But, I'm talking a lot about facts about oil right now, but that's not my topic for the day. Talking about oil is not that. I merely mention that as a benchmark for my topic. We think of oil as being this precious commodity, and markets obsess over its daily price and the fluctuations. And yeah, as a kid, I dreamed about being able to have something in my backyard, pumping out money. Well, all these years later, it turns out I do have something in my backyard, and it's far more valuable. I have sugar maples.
Yes!
All right, so we're going to talk about maple syrup. One of the best parts about my job is that right now, this time of year in March, is when you can make maple syrup. It's the only time you can make maple syrup. We have to have temperatures that are freezing below zero at night and thawing above zero. That's centigrade, during the daytime. And that freeze-thaw cycle starts to kind of wake the trees up and get the sap flowing. And we can't get it out other times of the year. It happens a little bit in the fall too, but people don't tap trees then. So the real consistent time to do it is in March right now. And making real maple syrup, it's the best. Making real maple syrup is a lot of work. You have to tap hundreds of trees. You have to collect the sap from the tree and transport it to a sugar shack where then you're going to have to remove the excess water. Traditionally, this is done through boiling, though producers now have started to use reverse osmosis machines to take some of the excess water out. The sap out of the trees are about 2% sugar, and by putting it through a couple of rounds of reverse osmosis, you can get that up to 8% sugar, which does not sound like that big a deal to the ordinary person, except you realize that that takes your boiling time for your sap from 15 hours down to about 5 hours. So if you're paying for if you're paying for the fuel and the labor time to sit there and boil that, that's a huge advantage. You have to get rid of tons and tons of water, and what you're left with is this sugar. And we bring it down to be maple syrup, a liquid. You can also take all the water out and make maple sugar, which is actually the more traditional thing that was done originally. So, when you think about this, when you're done, you have this amazing, all natural maple syrup. A lot of the stuff you get at the grocery store is artificial syrup. It's made out of corn syrup. It's not
maple syrup.
Any maple.
It's an abomination.
In fact, well, when I was a kid, you'd actually go to the store and you could buy a thing that said maple syrup on it, and there could be no maple syrup in it sometimes. Now, when you look at things like Mrs. Butterworth or a log cabin, something like that, they just say pancake syrup.
Or
and the word maple.
syrup.
Breakfast syrup, yeah, the word maple appears nowhere on there. Now, the reason those exist is that corn syrup is incredibly inexpensive. You can buy a 16-ounce container of corn syrup or breakfast syrup for about $2. Especially if you're getting the store brand, $2 is not a bad price. Real maple syrup sells for somewhere around $1 per ounce. So often it's sold in 6 or 8 ounce bottles. It's very rare to get a 16-ounce bottle of maple syrup, but if you could, you'd be paying about $16 for that bottle as opposed to $2. Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. Buy it up. But, a lot of people are not going to go out and spend $16 on something their kids are just going to pour over their pancakes and waste a bunch of. So people are used to the cheap stuff. And if that's what you grew up with, it may even be what you prefer flavor-wise. But now we're back on money. So you can see why I started talking about barrels of oil when we started. All right, let's do the math here. Current commodity price for a barrel of oil is $45. There's 42 gallons per barrel, so it comes out to about $1 per gallon is what the cost of crude oil is. The current selling price for a 42-gallon barrel of maple syrup is $1,400.
Are you going to talk about the Great Maple Heist?
It's just a tad more than
that's a great one,
I unfortunately we're going to save the Great Maple Heist for another episode because that's a whole other story to go into.
Still missing, Kirk.
I know. Well,
I think
it's not missing. It. People have eaten it.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, we'll save that for another show. Now that price though, that $1,400, which is the price changes each year, but that's a wholesale price. Like if you were to produce it and sell it to a distributor because you don't want to distribute it yourself, that's what you could get per barrel. If you bottle it yourself and sell it, you're gonna get maybe closer to that $1 per ounce price, especially if you have a fancy little bottle and tell a little story on the back. People love that stuff. So there are 5,375 ounces in a 42-gallon barrel. So at the extreme end, a barrel of maple syrup could be worth over $5,000.
That's
which is
pretty pricey.
Astounding. Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, I got maple trees in my yard. Can I do that? No. I can't because I have about 9 maple trees in my yard that are big enough to tap. Now that's a lot. That's a lot of big maple trees to have in my small yard.
That's not enough.
But no, based on some of the numbers I know from work where I make maple syrup as part of my job, I know that it takes about 3 trees to make a gallon of syrup by the end of the season. So my 9 trees could get me about 3 gallons of syrup per year. That's about $384 of syrup. So that's pretty awesome. But that's working a month to make, 3 gallons of syrup. That's not going to pay. That's not going to pay the bills. That's never going to pay for the evaporator or any of the fuel and stuff to do it. That's a money-losing operation. Some of the people who are doing this and making money may tap upwards of 10,000 trees. There's a guy in Wisconsin we're talking to who does 10,000 trees and has to take a tanker truck around to empty all the collection tanks
that
to do that.
Me.
Yeah, now just really rough math. If you're getting 10,000 trees, you're probably pulling in somewhere around 3,333 gallons of syrup, not sap, but syrup at the end of the season, which is about 80 barrels. So even at the wholesale price of $1,400 a barrel, that maybe means somewhere around $112,000 worth of syrup for about a month's worth of work.
For a really, really busy month, that's pretty.
Oh,
that's
gosh,
great.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you go, wow, we are all in the wrong line of work. Now, I do know that in order to start a company like that, you need to take out a loan of probably over $1 million just to buy the trucks and the buildings and all the all the equipment. So it's not like you just
the land.
go out and hike around. Yeah, and a lot of people lease land or make deals with landowners. So obviously you're not going out and just becoming an overnight millionaire from maple syrup, but it is a very profitable business. And it's just kind of fun to think about things that come in barrels. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, if I only could get, make some money in the backyard. Well, we can. I mean, I can only really make maple syrup and save myself a few bucks, but it's kind of cool that we have this amazing resource, at least in the part of the country where I know the three of us live and some of our listeners live as well. If you've never made your own maple syrup, it's frankly a money losing operation if you do it at home, because I always tell people the easiest way to do it is to use one of those like big turkey fryers you can get after Thanksgiving with the propane tanks under them, and you can buy them for pretty cheap afterwards. But now you're in like $50 for that, and probably to boil down several containers of that, you may go through a couple canisters of propane, which are about $20 a piece. So you're in about $100 and you get a gallon of maple syrup at the end, which is worth about $100. So I mean, maybe you break even.
Yeah.
But you do it for the fun and to be part of an awesome tradition. So I just want to share a little bit today about maple syrup. And I think you're right. We have to circle back around and tell the story of the great maple syrup heist sometime, because that is a pretty fantastic story as well. But we're going to tease you with that. You're not going to get it this week. You got to tune back in.
Well, Kirk, that was a pretty sweet topic.
There we are.
I was going to say we're going to have to go back and talk about the origin behind maple syruping as well at some point.
There's so much to do with maple production, and I think we do need to go back in sometime too and honor the native people in our country who went out and figured out how to make this first. It's not a European thing where we came in and figured something out. People have been making maple sugar and do maple sugaring for thousands of years here in this country.
I think I read somewhere it was like 10,000 years or something like that?
There's not really a written record or an oral tradition that says, in this year this happened, so it's hard to say when, but it's pretty safe to assume that as soon as people moved into an area, they were able to make use of the resources there and figure out what's going on. So people have been here in North America for a long time.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.